All right, everyone. This is your professor. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how to use this household pulse survey. And so you can see that I already have like all the screens set up I want to show you because I don't want the computer to lag as I'm pulling up screens. So basically, I'm asking you to go to the Census Bureau to do a paper for our class. And the Census Bureau is an agency that gathers a lot of our federal statistics. So they have like the American Community Survey, where every month 40,000 Americans are interviewed about their well being. And every 10 years they do our census. I hope that you've completed your census for this year. And that what they did when the pandemic hit was they decided that they were going to do a survey about Americans' well being. And so they gathered information about food scarcity, changes in education, employment, and income, mental well being, physical well being, whether children had access to computers and the internet. So lots of information. And they did it for 8 weeks, starting in April 23rd through June 23rd. And they also did a survey of small businesses to see how small businesses were doing and how they were affected by the pandemic. So when you open up the census, you'll see here, and you'll hit this screen, coronavirus pandemic, and it'll take you to this thing, which is kind of showing you what are the different kinds of databases. So if you hit this thing, it would show you all about how to use all the different sorts of databases. But what I want, and here's this survey for small businesses. They've got a little report about how small businesses did. But I want you to go to the Household Pulse Survey. And so you'll look for Household Pulse Survey, and when you hit it, it'll take you to this page. And so here it is, Measuring Household Experiences During the Coronavirus Pandemic. So it'll tell you a little bit something about the Household Pulse Survey. It'll say, here's the interactive tool. This is the thing you're going to use most often for this paper. But then here's also data tables. And then here's public use files. You won't want to use this because the public use files are the raw data that somebody like me, a researcher, would download to use with statistical software like SPSS or SAS or Stata. So when you first open this screen, what I'd like you to do is take a look and read things. And if you go to the bottom of the page, you can see that right here they have technical documentation. And if you open that up, what you'll see is they give you information about, hey, when did they do it? Who did they interview? Oops, sorry, no, that's not it. Oh, gosh, I got that. I had opened up the technical information too. But anyway, you would open up this document that would tell you a little bit about how they did the survey, who was interviewed, how many people they got, how they protected their rights, that kind of thing. And so I encourage you to open that up just to get a sense of what the data is like. You also, what I want you to do is open up the questionnaire itself, like what people answered. And so when you hit this questionnaire, that's the screen I was showing you. And so this is the questionnaire that they did for the week of June 11th through the 23rd. And when you look at it, they say, hey, they're going to ask, this is what they read to people. Hey, here you are. We're going to ask you about employment status, food security, housing security, education disruptions, your physical and mental well-being. It's not part of the census. This is a separate thing. Here's how we're going to protect your rights. And then it says, do you want to take the survey in English? Or if we send it to you in Spanish, can you take it? And then it starts asking you, like, when were you born? Are you male and female? What's your race, ethnicity? What educational attainment do you have? Your marital status? Whether there's children living with you? So all sorts of things that are demographic information. But then they start asking you, so have you worked in the last 4 weeks? Have you worked in the last 7 days? Has your employment, are you not working? If you're not working, why? Was it because you were sick? Was it that you were caring with someone who was sick with coronavirus? There's questions about, did you receive pay? Did you get a stimulus payment? And if you got a stimulus payment, what did you use it on? Did you use it for expenses or paying off debts or add it to your savings? It asks you questions about what sources of income that you did have, and then issues about food security. It goes on and on. And so what I would like you to do is take a look at it. See, like, children were not eating enough because we couldn't afford enough food. Because I want you to look at it so you get a sense of what are the types of questions they ask so that you can decide whether you want to use the interactive tool only or whether you want to actually look at data tables too. The data tables are the ones that will have the most detailed information. So if you go back here now, so once you've got a sense of what's the technical documentation telling you about how they did the survey, and you've got a sense of what questions they asked, now you can start your paper. And so you would open up the interactive tool, and if you open up the interactive tool, you're going to get this screen, this type of screen. And so it shows you What are the total numbers for each state? It can show you all the states. It shows you for the entire nation and each state within the nation. It gives you little screens to toggle, so you can see that if you open it up, you could see how things were in week 1 when they first started doing things. So you can see that there was less impact at week 1 as compared to week 8. And so in week 8, you can start seeing more of the darker blues, more people. You can kind of hit specific states and it'll give you numbers. So you can see by week 8, 44% of Ohioans reported that they had a loss in income in the last 2 months from the pandemic. And you can see on this screen it's showing you kind of what changes over the 8 weeks. And so here's week 1 through week 8. And so you might want to take a look at loss in employment, loss in employment, expected loss in employment, food scarcity issues, delayed medical care, housing insecurity. If you look specifically, you could change this and look at metro areas, which is what I'm asking you to do as well. And so you could see for the Detroit area, metropolitan area, 58% of citizens in the Detroit area reported that they had a loss in employment income by week 8. And so then you can see that you can change things. And so you can change it to take a look at, here, I'll move it back to states. You can take a look at expected losses, food scarcity issues, and so you can see that the southern states have had more food scarcity problems for their children. Indiana's had it worse than Ohio. Delayed medical care, how have Americans had to delay their medical care because of the pandemic, housing insecurity, and changes in educational attainment. And so when you're writing this paper, this is giving you for the entire United States. I want you to kind of report for the entire United States. This is looking for specific states. I want you to pick a state to report on, right? You're going to write a little bit about the entire nation and how it's changed or how it's doing, a specific state that you care about, and then a metropolitan area that you care about. So for example, what I might do if I were writing this paper is, of course, I'd write about the entire United States, and I'd talk about changes in time and about how we can see that almost half of people have reported delaying medical care, and half of people have experienced losses in employment, income. There looks like about 25% of Americans are experiencing food insecurity. And then I would pick a state, and I would pick, for my state, I would want to look at where my mother lives. My mother's 76, and so my paper would be writing about Wisconsin. But then I was born and raised in Detroit, and a lot of my students come from Detroit, and so I would probably write about Detroit for the state area. So this is what you'd be playing around with, looking up for statistics and choosing different types of issues to look at. Or you could look at the data. And the data themselves are a little bit scarier. So for example, if you open up the data, like here, if I go back here. If you open up the data tables, it's going to take you to this screen that says, hey, here are the different tables across the weeks, and you can decide, do you want to look early in the pandemic, or do you want to look at the most recent data? If you open up this one for the most recent data, it's going to take you to a screen that looks like this. There's tons of tables. And so it's going to show you, here's technical documentation if you want to read what this is telling you about. There's, 4 tables about education, 3 tables about employment, 5 tables about food sufficiency and food security, health tables, housing tables, stimulus tables, like how do people use their stimulus package. And so it's looking at, hey, do you feel like you're going to be confident in being able to pay for your housing? Have you been experiencing depression or anxiety? Have you had problems accessing medical care? Do you have health insurance? Have your children had food insufficiency problems because of the pandemic? How much are you spending on food? Are children getting access to computers? How have children had changes in the access to internet? So there's lots and lots, right? So much information, losses of income. And so what I did is I opened up 2 tables to show you, and it's going to be really scary when you see it. You're going to go, oh my gosh. But don't be worried, just stop and look. So this one's the educational table. And so you're saying, on this one it's showing you that it's giving you information about people by their age and their sex and their race, about their marital status. And so here I wanted to look at people who are your age, college-educated people. And so it's showing that there was about 4,900 college-age people, 18 to 24, who were interviewed in week 8. And so it said, of those 4,000, 3,000 of them always had a device that they could use for education when we went to remote learning. About 1 million of them, 983,000, usually had it available. And then 429, 500,000, had it sometimes available. And then 94,000 said that they rarely had a device. And then 3,500 report that they didn't have one at all. And then 123,000 didn't want to report. And so if you wanted to report a statistic, say how many of students were able to report that they always had a device, you would just divide 3,280,000 by the total, right? And so this, of course, is harder to use, but it's worth it. It's fun to look at. Like maybe you want to write something about differences by race. So did whites have greater availability than blacks to a device? And then this table also looks at internet access. How often did people have access to internet? So yes, these tables are kind of scary, but you might find something that interesting that you want to report about in your paper. So this one, I pulled up a screen about depression. And so I might want to look at, have women been depressed? And so it's looking at, hey, how often in the past 7 days did you have little interest or pleasure in doing things, or felt down, depressed, or hopeless? And so I might look at, I'd have to add up everything. So the people had not at all, several, more than half, nearly every day, or didn't report, right? And so they gave you the total here. So here's the total. And so what I might want to do is just say, hey, how many people out of everyone said that for several days? And so I would divide 73 million by the 102 million, right? Or how about people who said that nearly every day? And so you'd have to kind of divide that by the total. And then you might want to look at some sort of different kind of characteristics. And so if you want to use this but you're a little nervous, why don't you shoot me an email, or why don't you call me or text me or set up an appointment? Or you can come to the WebEx meeting. So yes, I think this kind of looks a little bit scary, but I don't think it will be once you start playing with it. And so the interactive table especially is pretty darn easy. And so, you're going to just be writing a paper about how America's changed in terms of income and employment and education and food scarcity in the last 2 months that the pandemic hit. I hope that you enjoy doing this. If it's meant to be the hardest thing you're going to do this semester or this summer, and so I'm glad we're getting it done right away. I look forward to maybe seeing and meeting some of you at the WebEx meeting on July 10th at 10 a.m. But if you can't make that, reach out to me in other ways if you need a little help with this. Take care.